All right, everybody. Today is Friday, April 28th, 2023. And yesterday, there's been a very exciting new political development coming out of West Virginia, and one that I think should make a lot of Republicans very happy. And this is the announcement by Republican Governor Jim Justice that he'll be running for the U.S. Senate in 2024. Now, if you are somebody that does follow political news, this doesn't come as a surprise because uh, Justice has been targeted by Steve Daines and the NRSC for quite a while, and he is a very good candidate for the Republicans. So in this video, I want to dive a bit into some of his background, how he will do in the primary against Congressman Alex Mooney, and why I think he is the best option for Republicans against Joe Manchin in 2024. So first of all, let's take a look at some of his background. So he was born and raised in West Virginia. Uh, his career was largely based on business. He's a big mining person, owns a lot of mining companies, and naturally he's very wealthy. Forbes estimates Justice's net worth at around 500 million around 2 years ago, and at one point I believe he was the wealthiest man in West Virginia. And later I'll be talking a bit about why I think that this wealth is important and why I think it's something that definitely favors him in this race. But before Justice is able to go against Joe Manchin or whoever the Democrats put up as their nominee, first he needs to win the Republican nomination. He needs to get the Republican nod. And before he gets that, he needs to win against Alex Mooney, who is the U.S. representative from West Virginia's 2nd Congressional District. And essentially what you've seen from Alex Mooney is he's been running to the right of Justice, right? You see Mooney branding Justice as a rhino. You've seen him calling him a liberal, or in this case, a liberal Republican. Overall, the message you're getting from Mooney is that Justice is not conservative enough. And this, I don't think this is valid. Anybody with looking at this with an objective lens can tell that Jim Justice has had a fairly conservative record while being the governor of West Virginia. But it's not totally groundless either, because Justice was a Democrat. He was originally elected in 2016 to the West Virginia governor's office as a Democrat, and he only switched office in 2017. But I don't think that he is a Republican in name only at all. But with that being said, I do want to take a look at Justice's opening campaign ad because I did find two very interesting things about it. So I'll play it here.
Attacks on West Virginia energy and tax increases on working families. Joe Biden and the radical left are a disaster for America. The stakes in this U.S. Senate race are high. We can't trust our future to an all-talk, no-action D.C. politician. West Virginia needs a proven conservative with real accomplishments. We need Jim Justice.
West Virginia keeps breaking its own record. Today,
Okay, so two things immediately jumped out to me for this campaign ad, which was, firstly, Justice didn't attack Manchin directly. Instead, I don't even think Justice mentioned the word Manchin even once in this 2-minute campaign ad. Instead, he opted to briefly attack, quote-unquote, Joe Biden and the radical left, which is definitely a lot more broad, and I think it also hints that if Justice were to be in a general election with Manchin, he'd probably closely tie Manchin with Joe Biden. But a second interesting thing that somewhat surprised me was that, once again, instead of directly attacking Manchin, Justice was directly attacking Alex Mooney. And to me, this shows that Justice believes that Mooney could be a credible threat to him to get the Republican nomination, or else he wouldn't be attacking him in the first place. And this potentially hints at a bloody and divisive primary. And speaking of the primary, I think that we do need to talk about Trump's endorsement here because I do think that this will be pivotal. And as you can see this because both candidates recognize this. Justice, as you can see in this article, he's doubling down on support for Trump. you've seen Mooney recently even flying down to Florida to talk up Trump, and this makes sense because Trump is extremely popular in West Virginia. So whoever gets Trump's nomination probably will get the Republican nomination in this state. So I do think that Justice is definitely the more favored candidate here in the Republican primary. And I think Trump probably recognizes this and he will probably endorse Justice. And it, another reason why I think Justice is also favored is because he will have the support of the Republican establishment. Most political observers will also know that he was heavily courted by Steve Daines in the National Republican Senatorial Committee. So he does have the bulk of the Republican establishment behind him, and that's definitely worth something. So, but why does the establishment Republicans favor him? Why do I think that Justice is probably the Republicans' best pick for the Senate in 2024? Well, it comes down to several reasons. Firstly, Jim Justice is a very popular governor. He has, as of last year, I think he's got a very high approval rating of 64%. That's very high. Most politicians probably kill for a rating like that. And Justice was also the fifth most popular governor in the country. And with popularity rates like that, that definitely won't hurt him in a general election. Secondly, I think that he would also be able to appeal to a broad number of the West Virginian electorate. And we all know that West Virginia is a state that's very conservative. But if you look at, voter registration, that's not the case. It's roughly split between Democrats and Republicans, with Republicans having a slight majority. And while a lot of these, ancestral Democrats who vote Republican for, say, Trump, but don't bother to change the party affiliation, they still may be open to voting for a more conservative Democrat, say Joe Manchin. But like I mentioned before, Jim Justice, he's also a former Democrat who turned Republican. So I think that Manchin has to get a lot of these former Democrats or registered Democrats on board. But I think that Justice will be able to take out a significant chunk of that ancestral Democrat support for Joe Manchin. Now, I think that another reason why I think Justice is better than Mooney is because Mooney's not even West Virginian. He was born in Washington, D.C. He was raised in Maryland, as you can see here, raised in Frederick, Maryland. And he also served in the Maryland State Senate, and he was also the former chair of the Maryland Republican Party. This could open him to attacks from Manchin or the Democratic or whoever the Democratic nominee is on accusations of him being a carpetbagger. And we've seen this sink Republican nominees for Senate in the past. For example, in 2018, in the Montana Senate race, you saw John Tester call Matt Rosendale Maryland Matt. That potentially was a factor in Tester's win over Rosendale. You also had John Fetterman painting Dr. Oz as a carpetbagger from New Jersey. That might have also been a factor in Dr. Oz's loss to John Fetterman. And so, it does show that carpetbagger attacks can sink Republican nominees, and this is something that Republicans should be worried about to a certain extent. Fourthly, as I've mentioned before, Jim Justice is a very wealthy man, right? He's worth over $500 million. And I think that Republicans will win this West Virginia seat regardless. I think West Virginia is simply too conservative a state to re-elect Joe Manchin. And furthermore, it's a presidential year. If West Virginia goes, 40 points to Trump, which I think it will, I don't see how Manchin, outruns Biden by 40%. That's just not happening. However, Republicans do need to think about the big picture here. Even if they win West Virginia, if Justice is the nominee, he can cut his own campaign checks, and the likely tens of millions of dollars that would otherwise be sunk into this Senate race could then be used by Republicans to flip other competitive seats in Ohio, Montana, Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And so I think that Justice is definitely, I think, the favored candidate in this race. I think he's definitely the best candidate for Republicans in this race. But I am very curious to see how this pans out. I do wonder whether or not Mooney's running to the right of Justice will work, and I am curious to see who Trump will endorse in this race. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe and to like this video. There's a lot of exciting content that's coming up, and I hope to see you in the next one.